But yeah, let's get into it. So yeah, this is a general build guide, so some things won't be specifically right for your build, but I can just tell you, if you're playing a melee, these things in general are going to be good for you. So we'll start off with the legendary abilities. First thing to know is, your total legendaries you can get are 3. Unless you're skill carding, that's the only exception. At least right now. Some people have said you can get 4. You could before Mal'Ganis, but in general let's just assume you can get 3. And you need to plan around those 3. So what 3 would I want on a melee? Well, first you need to think about which... You want to pick 2 that are going to be your best in slot, because after you pick your first 2, your chance to see more is really reduced. So you want to make sure you get your 2 best in slot first. And for those for melee in general, I'd always want Divine Protection and Bubble. I would always want those 2 on pretty much all melee I play. And the reason is because of the talent in Protection, Guarded by Light. So taking this talent, you get 3 seconds extra on your Bubble and on your Divine Protection, which is crazy. The amount of value in that talent is absurd. So if you're on a 1v1, you pop Divine Protection, 9 seconds of 50% reduced damage, and you could use Divine Shield immediately after, and that will last for 7 seconds. So the value in a 1v1 from having that is just crazy. So those would be my go-to best in slot. And then I would be thinking of an optional third I might want as a melee. So I'll tell you guys some good optional thirds. So we've got some, like Blink. Don't really need to explain this one. Most people have stuns. If you find something that doesn't have a stun, you could use it as a Pseudo gap closer. Great third legendary to pick up. You can take Ghost Wolf and use the Epic RE. It's called Spirit Dash, and so using this will remove roots and slows and give you 55% movement speed for 3 seconds. So it's great for mobility, whether you want to chase a caster down or run yourself and reset around a pillar. And it's only a 20-second internal cooldown. So Ghost Wolf's a decent one. I ran that with my warrior. Then you've got Heroic Leap. It's an extra gap closer. You know, that can't be bad. It actually can do a lot of damage. And with the RE, it can stun if you use it out of combat as well. I'll show you the RE. Heroic Entrance. So increases the damage, 80% versus players, and a 2-second stun if used out of combat, and increases your melee and range crit chance by 25% for 4 seconds. So you're getting a gap closer and a damage boost, and you can use Heroic Leap to avoid CC. So if you see a caster is casting Fear, for example, or you see a Death Core coming your way, you can Heroic Leap and you'll immune the CC. So that's a really good option for a third. Then we've got Bistro Wrath. This is only if you have a pet, of course. The damage increase, obviously really good, 15% damage boost, but you need to take the talent for it. I think it's Beast Within, in Beastmaster Hunter? Yeah, the Beast Within. So you get the damage boost, but more importantly, you're also immune to all types of CC while it's active, which is amazing for pressure. Popping Bistro Wrath, you're kind of guaranteeing you're going to force a major cooldown like Bubble. Then we've got Avatar. It's good both offensively and defensively, because you get a damage boost and you get reduced damage taken. So, you know, solid option, can't complain. Feral Spirits, another decent offensive cooldown. You get a slight heal, you get a sprint, and you get... The wolves actually continuously root the target as well. And from the perspective of someone who has been rooted by it, it's really annoying. Even if you're spamming Shapeshift while they're rooting you, they root you so quickly that you actually can't get out of it. And then we've got Hand of Freedom. This is great if you want a root or slow removal. Potential stun removal too, but the talent for Hand of Freedom to get out of stuns is really talent heavy. This one, Divine Purpose. So it will reduce the cooldown, and it will remove stuns, but it's 5 talent points, which is a lot. Melee don't like spending that much talent points on something that's not damaged, so yeah. Then we've got Killing Spree, great offensive cooldown. You're likely going to force a major cooldown from your opponent when using it. It does a lot of damage. And you can also use it as an anti-CC. So if they start casting Fear, or you get Wyverned, and you use it, you'll just immune it. So it's a really, really solid option as well. Then we've got Bladestorm, kind of similar to Killing Spree, but it's just slightly less effective. You'd use it in similar ways, but it's not going to do quite as much. And it's a little bit easier to counter. You can disarm both Killing Spree and Bladestorm to stop them, but Killing Spree drops your target and teleports you behind them, so it can make it really awkward to stop it. Then we've got Travel Form, good for resets or sustain builds. Not really much to explain there. Maybe a bit on the weaker end unless you really need to reset. Yeah, and that's it for the third, like, optional legendaries. The best way to roll them, like I said before, is think of the 2 you want for sure, and then be open to several as your third. And then when you level, don't pick any that come up unless they're your best 2. Even if you're seeing your optional third legendaries, like let's say you want Bubble and Divine Protection, and you see, you know, Blink or Killing Spree come up as your first or second, you still don't take it. You'll just make it harder to get the best in slot 2 that you actually really need. And then once you have your best 2, then you look for your optional third. So I could level and think, okay, I want for sure Divine Protection and Bubble. I'm only going to pick those until I have the 2. And then for my third, I'm open to Leap, Blink, and, you know, whatever, Killing Spree. Any other questions about legendaries before I move on? Yeah, server went down. Is what it is, doesn't really matter for the guide. What the fuck is this? Crom, you can learn something. Learn how to zug zug. You're here to teach me, Crom, okay. Share your wisdom. Crom, I've not played that for like a week. You're late to the party now. Off-meta build. See, the thing is, I make an off-meta build, and then it becomes the meta, and then I get flamed for playing it, even when people weren't playing it before. But yeah, I'm not trying to distract from the actual guide. So next, we got epic abilities. This is probably going to be a bit of a longer one. How to stick to casters with 100 fears and stuns. Well, listen, and I will help you, hopefully. So, epic abilities. Main advice for epic abilities is to cover all your bases. You want to make sure you get an interrupt, a CC of each main DR, which I'll cover, and defensives. It's not common for melee on Ascension to run CC, or at least much CC, but for me I see that as a big mistake. You can expect in pretty much every single matchup you have that your opponent will have a trinket and an immunity, and the immunity acts as a pseudo trinket, so really they have 2 trinkets. So if you only have 2 CCs, they'll be able to get out of all of them. But once you have one of each of the 3 main DRs, you'll likely be landing one of them full, as most only have the 2 CC breaks. And once you're getting the full CC, you're going to create a ton of pressure. And the CCs only get more value as the fight goes on, because they'll come off cooldown, but your opponent's trinket and immunities won't. So then you're getting 3 full CCs in a row. So yeah. So what are the best CCs of each DR that you should look for as a melee? We'll start with stuns. Shockwave, great AoE stun, short cooldown, and it does a lot of damage with the Tooth and Nail RE. Server's up. Good timing because I can show the Tooth and Nail RE. We'll show that before we move on. So this is what I was running on my Arms Warrior as well. Basically, if you hit in melee, you get a stacking buff, and once you reach 3 stacks, your Shockwave does bonus damage, has longer range, and lasts for an extra second. So this RE here. Using melee ability grants you stack of Tooth and Nail, increasing your Shockwave damage by 15% versus players. So that's 1 stack, so 3 stacks is 45% more damage, extra range and an extra stun, making it a 5-second stun. It's really strong. Obviously that will take up an Epic RE slot, but Shockwave's still good even if you don't run that. I prob rolled 300 times and the only slow I've gotten on melee is Deadly Throw. Is it worth going for the Epic Warrior Days RE? I know the one you're talking about, and I tried running it back in Season 3, I think? Coward's Bane. It doesn't proc enough to be worth it, and it's only when they're facing away from you. So I wouldn't bother. I will advise you on what to start to, so you don't end up in that situation with not having a slow. But I'll do starting abilities later on. Oh, the fucking Ascension channel changed. Let's change that quickly. Okay. So we covered Shockwave. Another good stun for melee is Concussion Blow. It's actually the best stun if you don't want to spend a lot of talent points. Because Concussion Blow, it used to have talent investment, but it doesn't anymore. There's actually, I'm pretty sure there's nothing that will affect Concussion Blow. Yeah. So you get it on a 30-second cooldown, just baseline. You only need the 1 talent point to actually take it. Whereas Shockwave, where, while it might be a better stun, it's got much more investment, an extra 3 talent points. So you're going to have to weigh up what you want. Is your build talent heavy? Maybe take Concussion Blow. Or, if you can't card them, and you see Concussion Blow come up, probably just take it. Then another option for stuns for melee, Hammer of Justice. If you have a bit more sustain to live until the second Hammer of Justice, then it can be good due to the longer duration on it and the range. Because if you spec into Hammer of Justice, it's a 5-second stun with the improved Hammer of Justice. The only downside being it's a longer cooldown. You only get it down to 45 seconds. So if you get longer fights, it can be good. And there are other perks to it as well. It can't be dodged or parried, whereas both Shockwave and Concussion Blow can be. So stuff like Evasion can be really tedious. Or like a block tank or parry tank. You'd think Shockwave wouldn't be able to... Like, Evasion wouldn't stop Shockwave, but it actually does on Ascension. So yeah, Hodge is good for that reason. There's not really anything that will stop it, minus like an immunity or Cloak of Shadows. Right, that's probably it for the stuns. We'll move on to Fear DR, or CCs that are on Fear DR. So this is stuff like Hollies, Fears, Gouge, Dragon's Breath, Traps, Sap. For melee, I'd recommend a couple of these. Intimidate and Shout, probably first off. It's great if you don't have any damage over time other than Rend and Deep Wounds, as Intimidate and Shout doesn't break on Rend and Deep Wounds, but it'll break pretty much immediately on any other source of damage. It's the shortest cooldown CC on this DR, meaning it's even been good for casters to take as well. And you get a bonus damage physical boost when you're on your first hit breaking the fear. I'll show you in the tooltip. The targeted enemy will be unable to move while cowering, and enemies take 15% increased physical damage. So if they're affected by Intimidate and Shout, and you break it with a big attack, let's say an execute or a counter attack, that will actually deal 15% more damage. So yeah, you get a fear and a bit of a damage boost. Then we've got Psychic Scream. Great instant fear. It can be used to either heal up and reset around the pillar, or you can fear them on a major cooldown like Divine Protection or Evasion. One thing, like a big rule in PvP, is to just not stand there and trade with your opponent while they're taking significantly less damage. You know, if I'm stood there trading with a guy who has Divine Protection up, he's taking 50% less damage. I'm maybe hitting him for 500 while he's hitting me for 1000. Why the hell am I going to stay there? I can just fear him and not have that bad trade or that bad exchange. Then we've got Dragon's Breath, shorter cooldown than Psychic Scream. It doesn't break on any damage over times. This damage over times though, not direct damage. So it will break on direct damage like Mortal Strikes and so on, but it won't break on bleeds or dots. Whereas the fears will actually break around halfway through, especially with bleeds. So yeah, it's a good option, especially if you're like a bleed rogue. Dragon's Breath solid. Then there's Gouge. If you have no damage over times, Gouge is really good. It's the shortest cooldown. It gives you a chance to heal. You can lock casters down more on their casts. Just solid option. Then there's interrupts. Melee interrupts like Pummel and Kick have shorter cooldowns, but personally I'm a big fan of Counterspell because it locks the caster out for the longest of all the interrupts. Because the other interrupts are, I think, 3 or 4 seconds. I'll double check. What's Kick? 4 seconds. What's Pummel? Pummel's also 4 seconds. Whereas Counterspell's 5, I believe. Yeah, an extra second adds up. But there's more reasons. You can also get the blanket silence from it with this talent, improve Counterspell. So this actually just blanket silences the target for 3 seconds in a similar fashion that the pre-silence does. But Counterspell's off global, so it's even better. And the fact that it actually silences them means that in a lot of situations as a melee, you'll kick or pummel them on their damage or their heal, and then they'll just fear you because it doesn't lock them out of that school, of that magic school. Whereas with Counterspell blanket silencing them, they're locked out on everything. They cannot cast. All they could do is maybe something physical like a Wyvern or a Scattershot. On top of that, if you have a stun and improve Counterspell at the same time, like if you, let's say I Shockwave and immediately Counterspell, because Counterspell's off global, only if I'm spec'd to improve Counterspell this is, so only if I have the silence, it means that they can't blink, and if they can't blink my stun, it's just crazy pressure against casters. Casters rely on the blinks to actually avoid the melee and to like drag the fight out for their CCs and everything. So if you can stun and silence, the casters will just fall over. Will I upload the VOD? Yeah, I've enabled VODs for this. If for some reason it doesn't work, I'll just post a document with all the details on. So either way, people should have it. I'll probably answer questions at the end because a lot of people have questions specific to their individual build, whereas this is just like a very general guide for melees. So yeah, we were just talking about Counterspell probably being the best interrupt right now, but despite that, the other interrupts are still good, and really, you shouldn't be too picky once you pass 5 to 6 epics. You've actually probably seen my last few characters have just run Kick because, you know, once you're at like 7 epics and you need an interrupt, you're just gonna take it. You can't just hard roll for Counterspell at that level. Okay, so that's probably it for interrupts. We'll move on to disarms. There's just the warrior and the rogue disarm really. Both are good. I'd maybe evaluate the rest of your toolkit and your build and ask yourself if you need the extra help in the melee matchups. You know, if you keep losing over and over to melee, disarm's probably a good pickup. Just make sure you have some expertise so that it's not getting dodged or parried. Because if you're going to rely on your disarm and then they dodge or parry it, you can pretty much lose the matchup due to that. But most melees should be running expertise anyway, because yeah, everyone has high baseline dodge or parry. So I'll show you good talents for it. If you need expertise, the best talent is weapon expertise, 10 expertise. The second highest raw expertise is primal precision. You get 8 expertise for 2 points. And if you're using a two-hander, you can get, what's the name of the RE? I'll just search expertise. Weapon command. Only while using a two-hander, you get 10% melee attack speed and 10 expertise. Really good epic RE for melee. So even if you're not running disarms, in general you probably want at least 20 expertise, up to probably around 30, so somewhere between there. Yeah, there's Fiery Payback as well, but that's more of a talent. I'm just covering epic abilities right now. Yeah, and still on the topic of disarms, you can also consider that when you're fighting people with shields, disarms actually make people drop their shield. So the bonus armor that they're getting from the shield is removed while you disarm them, and you remove their ability to block your attacks. And even stuff like shield wall, if you disarm a shield wall, it just gets removed. So it can be good in that sense as well. What do we have next? We've got defensives next. So these are epic defensives. First one I'll start with is Voidwalker. You'll probably see many people play with this. Voidwalker with Soul Link especially is fantastic. Soul Link's the rare ability from Warlocks. I'll show you. Where is it here? Talented. Talented rare ability. 6% reduced damage. And you can go improve Soul Link, so it's 12% flat baseline reduced damage the entire fight. They did nerf it recently so that your Voidwalker has to be within 30 yards of you, but despite that it's still good. And then in addition to the shield, in addition to Soul Link, you get the shield from Voidwalker. It's just a flat absorb, like it absorbs damage. And if you use it at the very start of the fight, you're more than likely going to be able to use it more than once in the fight. So if you're running Voidwalker, as soon as you get engaged in that fight, pop the shield. But don't use it, as you're running in. Make sure, your opponent's actually fighting you back. Because if someone pops the Voidwalker shield and I'm fighting them, but we've not actually engaged yet, I'm just going to avoid the fight until that shield fades. So make sure they're actually in the fight with you before you pop it. Will this guy teach me the Mongo Bongo? That is the point. Next defensives, Barkskin. 1 minute cooldown, 25% damage reduction with the talents. The talents in Resto Druid at the bottom here improve Barkskin. So 1 minute cooldown, 25% reduced damage. Really solid. It'll help you in the melee versus melee matchups for sure. If you took Barkskin and they took Death Wish, you actually have a net damage difference of 15% on them. And this is how you should approach your thinking. Because you've chosen an epic ability that's going to reduce your damage by 25%. They've chosen an epic ability that increases theirs by 15%, so that's a 10% difference. But they're also increasing their damage taken by 5%, so it's you're actually up 15% damage on them. So yeah, Barkskin's really solid, and it's usable while stunned. Then we've got Evasion, good for melee matchups too. You can actually take Preparation with Evasion as well. They did nerf it slightly, so I think you get a debuff for a short time after using Evasion, before you can prep Evasion again, but even then it's good. Only really for melee matchups though, it won't do much against casters. A few exceptions are, if you're very on point with your prediction and they're going to Wyvern you or Scattershot you, you could pre-evasion that. Another downside of evasion though is that it can be countered with stuns. It can be awkward to stop the evasion with stuns like Shockwave and Concussion Blow, like I said before, unless you can get behind them, which some builds can by just Shadow Stepping, because Shadow Step puts you directly behind them. So if you Shadow Step and immediately use your stun, it'll just remove the evasion. And then stuff like Hammer of Justice will just get rid of it straight away. War Stomps as well if you're fighting a Tauren. So yeah, I'm a bit on the fence with Evasion, but it is good for the melee matchups. Yeah, Evasion kind of fell out the meta a bit. It's still decent, but it's really just for like all in on the melee matchups. Lastly, on the defensives, we'll cover Last Stand. Amazing ability for both fighting casters and melee. If you use it when you're low health, you can almost see it as a 20% heal. Because yes, it takes the 20% heal away. It takes the 20% health away after 20 seconds. But if you use it when you're low health, the odds are either you or your opponent's going to die before that ends. So you can basically see it as a 20% heal. So yeah, Last Stand, very solid ability. Off global as well, which is nice. Then that's it for defensives. We've got offensives. There's only really Death Wish I'd count as offensives for epic abilities for melee. Yeah, so Death Wish, great offensive cooldown, especially due to how long it lasts. I did previously say that Bark Skin might trade better, but the advantage of Death Wish is that it has a longer duration, because Death Wish lasts 30 seconds, I believe. 30 seconds. So in an extended fight against Bark Skin, where's Bark Skin balance, right? Yeah, Bark Skin's only 12 seconds. So in an extended fight, it could end up trading better than Bark Skin if you are getting the full 30 seconds out of it. Also, Death Wish probably better than Bark Skin against casters if you're needing to secure a kill, because against a lot of casters who are CCing you a lot, you're only going to get a short window of uptime to do your damage, so having that extra bonus damage might help you to secure that kill in that short window. So Death Wish is a very solid option as well. Opinions on the Last Stand RE. It used to be good, but they nerfed it, so I'm pretty sure now it actually reduces the duration of Last Stand. Yeah. So it does dispel harmful effects on you and gives you a damage boost, but it only lasts for 10 seconds. And that 10 second difference is big. You know, you're pretty likely that actually Last Stand will fade when you're using the RE, rather than you or your opponent dying first. So I wouldn't recommend taking it. God, we're still in the epics. Next is gap closers. Personally, I think charge is king right now. Unless you have a very specific need for the other gap closers, I would recommend taking charge. The double charge is fantastic and borderline overpowered now that it lasts for 5 seconds. The 5-second window where you can charge and then recharge again a second time. You can also spec into anger management in the warrior tree. So this will reduce your damage taken by 30% for 4 seconds after charging. So you're getting something that's more damage reduction than Bark Skin just for pressing charge. That's really strong. And tied into that, you're getting bonus rage from the talent as well, so really solid. Charge also has the perk that you can just roll it at level 1, whereas with the other gap closers like Shadow Step and Intercept, you'd probably be skill carding them, so you actually save a skill card slot by running charge, which is a huge deal. So yeah, charge is just king right now. The exception being, you know, if you're a rogue and you need Shadow Step, for example, because there's various interactions with Shadow Step for rogues. I'll move on to utility. For epic utilities, Berserker Rage, amazing right now. You'll get yourself out of fears, saps, repentances, gouges, and so on. You're really likely to get value out of it, and especially versus casters, it's kind of like having a third trinket. If you can Berserker Rage their fear, then you can trinket their Wyvern Sting, and then you can bubble their Hammer of Justice, and then they're out of CC. They have nothing. So having basically a third trinket is ridiculous. Really nice. Then other utility you could take, Shadowing Throw Master Spell. They can be really useful as well, but I'd only recommend it if you're playing a very aggressive build where removing that immunity will just help you land the kill during your burst window, for example. Then there's Dispel Magic or Cleanse. It can be good if you're struggling with roots or slows, because you can just dispel yourself out of them. Though there are other, probably better options for that. The other use case is if you're a rogue, like a rogue or stealth build, you can just dispel dots off you so that they won't bring you out of stealth. It's another good use. Then what do we have? That's it for the epic abilities. I'll go on to rare abilities, but these are a bit more spec specific, so there won't be as much to cover. All I'd say is make sure to get your relevant weapon enhancement, and don't take too many rares until you have it. So if you need Rockbiter, either lucky card it or just be really picky on your rares until you get your weapon enhancement, for example. I'd also say make sure you have a form of mana regeneration. Your mana regenerations, for most specs, this is casters and melees included, is going to come from your rare slot, so make sure you have at least one form of it as a melee. I see a lot of melee that don't take any mana regeneration, and once the mana gets to 0, the fight's over. You know, they have no reset potential, they can't heal at all, they can't use any of their like magic cost abilities. It's GG at that point. Whereas if you run Mana Gem, for example, if the caster goes and heals around the pillar and you can't get to him, you can heal up as well, and then you Mana Gem, and then if that happens again, Mana Gem again, heal up. You're giving yourself a chance to stay in these longer fights. If you don't take any mana regeneration, those longer fights are just an auto lose. You can have Conjure Water, but that time you're spent drinking, you could be spent healing, so definitely get some mana regeneration. Then for rares also, you can pick up just bonus damage abilities. So you want stuff like Rampage. This is just 5% flat crit, if I don't typo. 5% crit, really good. Or you've got True Shot Aura, again, typo again. Just 5% AP. This True Shot Aura shares a buff slot with Unleash Rage, so you can't have both. They do the same thing, but Unleash Rage is 3 talent points, True Shot Aura is 1, so really good value. Then you've got stuff like Aspect of the Beast, another great rare for a melee, 5% AP. Once you're sacking these things like True Shot, Aspect of the Beast, you've got your Battle Shout up, you're just going to get a lot of attack power. And then lastly for rares, I'd say get your important damage abilities. So this might be Mortal Strike, Storm Strike, Divine Storm. Just make sure you're leaving room for your like critical abilities, and probably, unless you've carded them, be very picky on your rares like you were with the weapon enhancements until you have that ability, you know, if your build depends on it. Then we've got uncommons. Actually do need to cover this, even though people probably think uncommons aren't important. I'd say Battle Shout to start off with. It's better than Blessings of Might for a few reasons. Firstly, it can't be purged, which is a big deal. A lot of people don't run purge, some do, but there's one thing melee should know, is that casters get a purge in their Shadow Fury. So if you get Shadow Furied with the Capstone, it removes a beneficial magic effect. If they Shadow Fury you and it removes your attack power bonus, that's not good. If you have Battle Shout, you avoid that. But there are other reasons as well. Running Battle Shout lets you run Blessings of Kings as well, which is a big deal, because you can only have one blessing active from like a unique player. It says there on the tooltip. So you can run Battle Shout and Kings, but you couldn't run Kings and Might. So again, for that reason, Battle Shout's better than Blessing of Might. And even more so, Battle Shout has synergy with Commanding Shout in the talent Commanding Presence in Warrior. So this talent here, increase the attack power bonus of your Battle Shout and the health bonus of your Commanding Shout by 24%. Maybe it rounds up to 25%. I can actually see I've got talents. Yeah, 25%. And if you have Intimidating Shout, it also reduces the cooldown on Intimidating Shout by 10 seconds. So this is a crazy high value talent here. So having Battle Shout and Commanding Shout and Intimidating Shout, really good. Then we've got Powered Fortitude, more health. I mean, don't really need to explain this, just extra stamina. Very good as an uncommon. We've also got, like I said, Commanding Shout before, more health again, and a lot of people think that it shares a buff slot with Fortitude, but it doesn't. You can have both and you'll get the benefit of both. Commanding Shout actually shares a buff slot with the Warlock Imp, the Imp's health bonus. Do I have my Imp out? I'll just show you quickly. So Commanding Shout shares a buff slot with Blood Pact. So you actually do want Fortitude and Commanding Shout. Then we've got Blessing of Kings, like I mentioned before, and Mark of the Wild. They're pretty similar, they're both just good bonus stats. You know, you'll be getting some intellect, stam, strength and agi from them. Just decent buffs. Not really much to talk about there. Arcane Intellect is actually surprisingly good if you're a melee, because as a melee you have a lower mana pool, and Arcane Intellect is a pretty big boost to your mana pool. And even more than that, if you use ranged AP, Intellect is directly attack power with this talent. Increase your ranged attack power by 100% of your Intellect, which is a really big deal. So Arcane Intellect's just straight up attack power for ranged attack power. And even if you're a melee, you can run this talent. Increase your melee attack power by 60% of your Intellect. And which might not sound great, you know, if you just have basic strength attack power gear and your only source of Intellect is the base Intellect that you get and then Arcane Intellect. But what you can do is you could use the Hunter PvP set, because the Hunter PvP set has agility, attack power, crit and Intellect. So you're just getting like a passive boost to your attack power. So yeah, Arcane Intellect's a solid buff. That's it for abilities. I'll go over skill cards quickly, but they're kind of going to tie into everything I just covered with the epics and rares. So for skill cards, I'd recommend get your important rares or epics that your spec just cannot function without. You know, if you need Storm Strike, Mortal Strike, or you're rogue and you need Shadow Dance for your spec to just baseline work, card them. Don't go through the stress of trying to lucky card them, because, for example, Storm Strike and Mortal Strike, they're level 40 abilities. Lucky carding level 40 abilities, you're not going to have a very good time, because your chance with lucky cards stops, like the bonus stops once you're level 70. So yeah, I would just recommend just carding it if your build like cannot function without it. If it's just a bonus, then maybe don't skill card it. I'd never recommend carding commons and uncommons. You can lucky card them if you want, but you should be saving your skill card slots and your golden skill card slots for things you crucially need. So, you know, I could skill card Shadow Dance, Shadow Step, Feign Death and stuff if I was a rogue, you know, things that are just crucial. And then, in general, if there's not really much that you need for your build, but there's just a lot of good options of what you can card otherwise. So I'd say cover your bases on your epics with the CCs of each DRs that I mentioned earlier. So, you know, get your important CCs, important defensives. Maybe you want to card a Voidwalker, maybe an Interrupt. I found myself carding Counterspell a lot because it's just so good. And then, like I said with lucky cards before, the better they are, the lower level. The lower level they are, the better they are, because you have more chances to roll them in your leveling journey. And as I said before, lucky cards just stop being effective at level 70. So, yeah, card low level abilities if you can. Like I found myself lucky carding Flame Tongue all the time because it's only level 10. And Counterspell as well, it's level 16. So I have a very good chance to see these. But for Arcane Power, it's level 40. My lucky card's only effective from level 40 to level 70. Whereas Flame Tongue's active for twice the amount of rolls as Arcane Power. I'm twice as likely to see it just on that alone, not even including the rarity difference. So it's a big deal. What else do we have? Then starting abilities. God, has this been like 45 minutes already? Christ. Yeah, starting abilities. Charge, it's going to be an easy starter pick. Like I said before, it's the best gap closer right now, unless you have specific needs for the other gap closers. So guaranteeing your mobility already at level 1, obviously amazing. Then I'd say Hamstring. the vast majority of melee are going to want hamstring. You get your slow, guaranteed level 1. It's only a rare, whereas all of the range slows are epic, so you're not wasting an epic slot on it. And yeah, you're guaranteeing it at level 1, so really good. Then I would get important blues for your build that are available at level 1. So a melee hunter will want Aspect of the Hawk, warriors will want battle stance, rogues will want stealth. Just guarantee important rares that like are crucial for your build. And then, you know, if you don't have many that are important for your build, you can get important uncommons for your build, like Battle Shout. I wouldn't recommend starting common abilities, because you'll likely see them while leveling anyway. And if not, you probably will early into your rolls. Maybe if you're really, really unlucky you won't, but it's not good to build around that. Build around what's likely to happen. Then lastly we have gear. Gear will kind of depend more on what build you're running. I'd say in general for melee right now, agility is a bit better just because the agility TBC gear is better optimized than the strength gear. Plus you get more crit, which is good synergy with the Poleaxe spec, which is a great talent right now, and with deep wounds, you'll just get more deep wounds procs. So for agility, I'd recommend either the rogue or hunter gear. Rogue gear if you don't want the mental dexterity talent. Hunter gear if you can afford to take it. And hunter gear gives you a higher mana pool as well, which is another bonus. Strength, on the other hand, it's great for builds that are really attack power focused, because you will get more raw attack power, but at a trade-off for less crit. Some abilities scale really well with attack power, like Bloodthirst for example, and then there's some builds where you need to go strength. An example being Paladins using One with the Light RE, because the RE has an interaction with strength. Let's get it up. So yeah, it says your physical damage doesn't halved, but your holy spell damage is increased by 40% of your strength. So obviously, if you're playing this RE, you're going strength, because that's how the RE works. In general, for gear, you'll want to use the main PvP set pieces. So your head, shoulders, chest, gloves, and legs. And then, so you want those to be the PvP pieces, like the arena pieces. But then your off pieces, like your rings and your cloak, you could look at using the Heroic Bloodforged pieces. And weapons are likely going to be Heroic Bloodforged as well. Maybe blacksmithing. And that's actually it for the guide.